Hey my friends, welcome back to a new video. Today I want to remind you to take it easy, my friend. Eventually everything will work out much better than how you're trying to control it. Well, the truth is that you're only trying to control a certain outcome because of that inner critic. Isn't that so? Like, that critic may say to you that things will not work well, you're doing the wrong thing, you're not talented enough, you're not good enough, you can't make it happen. That's the critical voice. So I want to remind you today, my friends, to work on understanding your inner critic. That's a bit different approach because often we are trained to ignore it. Like, don't trust that critic. So people start ignoring it, suppressing it, running away from it. And we can't run away from our minds. Isn't that so? So work on understanding your inner critic and become a friend to it rather than being offended by it. It takes time to understand the origin of that voice, but once you do, you will be able to have a compassionate approach toward you instead of being angry and frustrated. So that's something truly powerful I've learned in my life. That when I've started to understand the origin of my inner critic, I was able to be more compassionate towards myself. Because sometimes when we experience that inner critic, we become angry towards that part of us. Like there's something wrong with us. And I want to remind you, there's nothing wrong with you. Whatever you're working on, that inner critic will be present because it is protecting you. Not that you need to surrender fully to it, but don't force to ignore it. Don't force to suppress it. Understand it. So how can we learn to understand the inner critic? Well, the origin of it is coming from our childhood. We've been hurt. We've been traumatized. We all have been traumatized in different ways. And it caused us to create a certain critical perspective on life. And that's where we truly need to become aware of what's the source of that story. For example, if you were living a childhood where somebody was constantly complaining about certain specific thing, and suddenly you find yourself now complaining about that same thing, and that may be that inner critic. And every time you may complain about that certain specific thing and you catch yourself, you may be angry towards yourself, like why that voice is still present. But once you recognize the origin, it makes sense that that's how the life was presented to you. So be kinder towards yourself. Eventually, that voice will become calmer, kinder, more compassionate, as you're becoming calmer, kinder, and more compassionate. And it is important to have a dream. It is important to have that vision for the future. But at the same time, it is important to create a beautiful relationship with that inner critic, because it's not your enemy. It is just trying to protect you. And sometimes a form of protection that it is using is not the healthiest for your evolution, and that's what you need to recognize. Like a mother who's trying to protect the child, saying you shouldn't go outside because it's raining and you may get sick. But child knows that he wants to dance under the rain. So he goes outside and dances under the rain. And he gets back home and mother gets angry. I told you you shouldn't go outside. And what happens that child will develop angry attitude towards his mother. And mother was just trying to protect him. So she had a good intention, which created a bad effect in the child. And that's your inner critic. It is trying to protect you, but creating often negative effects on that path of evolution. But what we need to recognize is, if we go back to that story of a child, that once that child gets older, an adult, let's say that way, and that guy starts looking back into his childhood, why he's hating his mother, and he recognized that his mother was just trying to protect him to the best of her knowledge. Now he's able to develop compassionate connection with her. And that's understanding. So once you recognize that your inner critic is trying to protect you, you can develop a compassionate connection with it. You don't need to surrender to it. You don't need to fully follow what it is saying. But every time you hear it, don't judge yourself for that. Accept it. Okay, yes, I feel you. But let's do it my way today. Say to yourself, let's do it my way. Let's see what happens. And sometimes the way it is protecting you is good. Because if you would just follow your dreams without any critical thinking, you may get hurt, right? Something may happen. So there's always the middle point between the dream and the critic. There's always the middle point. And with a great self-awareness, we will find the middle point. And then the middle point is in the heart, right? And heart is generating compassion. So when you learn to be compassionate towards yourself in all different situations, everything will become much easier. Your understanding of your past will become much better. You will be able to fill the missing links. Often we have a story of our past that is missing many details. And by compassion, we'll be able to find more of those details. And if our present state is created by our past, when we change our past, our present will change, right? We will feel differently. And from that point of view, we are able to see also our future much more differently. Because often, even when people visualize that greatest possible future for them, when they get out of the vision, they experience that critic saying to them what they're doing. They're wasting their time. And they fall back into their unconscious patterns. So you need to catch yourself hearing that critic, not blaming yourself for that. Just a change in emotional response to that voice will eventually help you to overcome what's holding you back. And that's something truly powerful. So often healing of your inner child will help you on that, like working on your shadows will help you to understand more of your past, the origin of that critic. But accepting it and being kind towards it will help you to move on with it, to follow your dreams with the presence of that critical thinking as well, because it is important. Like in art, that critical thinking may say to you, well, your art is not good enough. And you shouldn't surrender to that voice. But at the same time, you shouldn't ignore it, because maybe what it is trying to do is just trying to say to you that your potential for producing art is far greater than what you're doing right now. So you can improve your skills. It's same in relationships, in communication, in making money, in anything. So we need to question that critic to find the truth. What are you trying to say to me from that kind point of view? From that compassionate point of view? If you're here for my greatest possible evolution, let's work together, right? And that's a different approach to me. So I often work with my inner voice that way because, we can't change our past. But the way the past is printed in us, we can use the best out of it. And when we use the best out of our past, we will use it as a fuel to make what we feel that we need to do possible. So rather than sabotaging and being blocked, we will use that anxiousness, that fear, that guilt, that shame, whatever it is, as a fuel to improve what we feel that we need to improve about the character we are wearing. So know that whatever you're working on, you're doing it for yourself. Not to prove anything to anyone because it comes from wounds. Not to show up as the smarter guy because it comes from certain wounds. But you're doing it for yourself. And once you know that what you're doing it for your evolution, you will always be able to make the right choice. Not out of ego, but out of your heart. And that's something that is really important to me. I always ask myself, am I doing it for my evolution? Because when you're evolving in that healthy way, you're not doing it just for yourself. Everyone will notice the change inside of you. And you're being a great example of that. But you're not doing it out of any egoistic way or agenda. You're doing it actually out of compassionate, loving intention to be a better human. And that's truly beautiful. So my friends, I hope you found anything valuable in today's message. I'm sending you all lots of love, blessings, and power. Have a beautiful day, and thanks to all of you for supporting my art in my Etsy shop. I Draw My Passion. You're all truly appreciated. Till next time, one love.